what we're going to practice today is some naming. All right. Now, before you can name a compound, you have to identify what type of a compound it is. And there's 3 basic types of compounds. We're going to look at 2 of them. The third one we're not going to look at now. We'll come back later. Metallic compounds, we'll look at this later. But it's just formed by the strong attraction of different nuclei for the sea of electrons that are shared. It's the attractive force between the metal and metal atoms. We'll talk about this later. The 2 types of compounds, but the bottom line is they're all made of metals. And as long as you can identify an element as a metal, you can identify a metallic compound. But we'll come back to this later. The 2 types of compounds that you need to be familiar with are ionic compounds and covalent compounds. Because they have different rules for naming them, then you have to be able to identify, am I looking at an ionic compound or a covalent compound? Ionic compounds are formed by the strong attraction between oppositely charged species, typically a metal cation and a non-metal anion. So when you're looking, and then also some polyatomic ions that you'll have to come to recognize. But the metal, if you can, you have to have a periodic table handy when you're describing the type of compound that you have. Just look, is the element that's listed first a metal? Is the element that's listed second a non-metal? That's going to tell you it's an ionic compound. All right, and you use the periodic table as a guide to determine if it's a metal or a non-metal. The covalent compounds are also called molecules. By the way, ionic compounds are always referred to as compounds. Covalent compounds are called molecules. The word molecule is indicative of the fact that the atoms are held together by covalent bonds. And so they're formed by the strong attraction of different nuclei for the same pair of electrons. We'll look closely at this type of compound in part 2 of lecture 9. For now, let's step back and take a closer look at ionic compounds.